has been said over these last days, there's another link in our chain of stories that's been opened with a question. When the age of the gurus is ended, and there's no longer a guru to tell us that we've arrived, or a Zen master to confirm our enlightenment, how do we know that we know? How do we know, as that story goes, that we have the proper authority? And it's been suggested, for the sake of this link, that we become like a hologram, living and recognizing that the whole is in the parts, and the parts are in the whole. Over these last days, with the calls and visits that have been made, there's obviously an air about abounding at the moment, because it's been said most often, I feel numb, I feel empty. And the several old stories to be told, whilst they're in the context of our question, they're also relevant to what has been said over these days. And the first is that story about the itinerant Zen monk who wandered into a certain village where an old woman noticed his dedication and his piety. So she took it upon herself to take care of him, to travel with him. And when she did, she ensured that his monk's robes were washed and clean. She built little shelters for him from the rain and covering from the heat. She cooked him fish and vegetables. In all, she took care of his needs. But after some years of traveling, she decided that she would test him. And so she went to one of those ladies of the night and asked her to visit this monk, approach him in the ways that only these ladies of the night know how to do, and report back to her what happens. So, of course, this is what happened. And the next day, when the young prostitute came back to the old woman, and she inquired, well, what happened? What did he say? The young woman related that she had approached the monk, as was the bent, and his reply to her had been, a dead tree grows on a cold rock in winter. Nowhere is there any warmth. And the old woman got angry, and she said, do you mean to say he did not even give you any comfort or ask about your well-being, or give you any teaching? And of course the young woman replied, no. And so the old woman got up and went and burned down the shelter that she had made for him. And the second story is that story about the princess who was born to a king who had no other daughter. So she was very beloved by him, to the extent that she was indulged in every way. Every desire was fulfilled, whatever it might be. So she became very spoiled and self-centered. Her brothers tried to teach her to be more aware and kind and considerate of others, but she continued in her way of being self-centered and demanding, knowing that whenever anything went wrong or anything that she desired, all she had to do was to go to her father the king and it would be fulfilled and done. But there came a day when she came to marriageable age. Now the king, who was a stickler, you might say, for traditions and so forth, said to his daughter, "It is time now for you to be married. I will call all the worthy suitors from the kingdoms around us, and you will choose a husband." But she put on one of her tantrums, saying, "I don't want to be married, I'm happy where I am," knowing that her every whim was indulged by her father, the king. But the king was adamant, and so he did what he said that he would do. He called all the princes who were suitable suitors for his daughter to his kingdom, where they were to be paraded before the princess so that she might choose. But she became very rebellious, stating that she did not want to know them, she did not want to see them. So she went to her chamber to pout. But whilst she was in that chamber, all of a sudden her room went dark. But in that darkness, a figure appeared, an ephemeral figure appeared and began to speak to her. Of course, she quaked in fear at this seeming apparition. But the apparition spoke in a gentle voice and told her that she must obey her father. It was time. It was the tradition. It was the way of life that she should marry and beget children. But again she argued even with this apparition. And the apparition said, "Go to the window and look out, because there in the courtyard is the one who has been destined to be your husband. He is one who will take care of you very well." So the princess did as she was told, and when she looked out of the window down into the courtyard, there was a handsome being, wearing a helmet on his head with a plume, dressed in the garments of a prince, velvet jacket, and the like. So when she returned to the room and faced the apparition, even though still rebellious, the apparition said, "You must obey." So, as it happened, the very next day, the princess was placed behind a screen, and the various suitors were paraded before her. And indeed, almost without her realizing, when it came to the princely figure with his plumed helmet, it was she who she indicated that she had chosen. The king was very pleased because, as it happened, this prince was the one he would have chosen himself as a suitable husband for her. So the nuptials were arranged and the wedding took place. It was then that the princess went with her new husband back to his kingdom. And at first everything went well. All those around her indulged her, fulfilled her whims. But it was not long before they realized that she was a spoiled and petulant, self-centered being, and they soon wore thin in the ways that they were able to indulge and serve her. Even her husband grew tired of her demands, her tantrums, and her rebellious nature. So he became very quiet. In fact, he took more to going hunting than he did before, not wanting to be around this being. But after some while, one day, when the princess was in her chamber, again the room went dark, and that which had appeared to her before came as a field of light, gossamer light, ephemeral light, and said to her, asked her, "Why are you not happy? Your husband takes good care of you, but because of your petulance and demands, he has grown distant from you, even though he still loves you dearly." And the princess, almost stamping her feet, made excuses for her not being able to love him. But just at that moment, the being of light took from their robe what appeared to be like some kind of staff, or even a wand, you might say, and tapped the princess on her heart. And the apparition said, "Ah, now I see, now I know. Your heart has become like glass." "Oh," the princess said, "I don't want to have a heart of glass. I want to love him, but I just can't. What do I need to do? Tell me, and I will do it." So the being of light said to her, "You must follow my instructions carefully. It will not be easy." Tell me," said the princess. And the being of light said, "First, shun all the gowns, the jewelry, the trappings of being a princess. Listen to those around you and remain completely silent." The princess said, I will do it. I will do it." And from that moment on, No longer did she wear the silks and satins, diamonds and pearls and rubies that adorned her being every day before. She kept silent, speaking not at all. And all around her, even her husband, wondered what is it that had struck her dumb. And those people close to her said, she has been afflicted because of what she is, a self-centered little minx. But it came to a moment where her husband, the prince, said, I must find a cure, a way to help my bride. I will go to the far reaches of the kingdom, where there is said that there is a physician who can cure any ill. So preparations were made for his departure. His horse, his stallion, was saddled, and he, standing in the courtyard, just about to mount his horse, when the princess looked out of her window and seeing her husband ready to embark on this quest to bring healing to her, immediately something arose in her, and she dashed down the stairs from her chamber and out into the courtyard where the prince and his stallion stood. And she said, Don't go. I love you. And in that moment, both the princess and her husband heard what sounded like the breaking of glass. Suddenly, something was shattered. The prince scooped his wife up into his arms and carried her into their palace. And from that day on, they lived in harmony and blissful happiness. She told her husband the story and how the apparition had told her that when someone becomes so self-centered, that oftentimes the heart hardens, becomes brittle, and turns to glass. As we take these stories and allow them to be ingested, you might say, allowing them to come into our hologram, where our divine scientist, our divine physicist, our divine alchemist, and our divine psychologist bring their powers to bring about that wholeness and bring before us the recognition of the meaning of these stories and all stories, bringing with it the possibility that we will answer the question that's been asked: how will